Hello there, and welcome to Module 10.8, Factoring by Grouping. Our objective for today is that I can factor higher degree polynomials by grouping. Now, a cubic polynomial is a polynomial that gets to the x cubed term, cubic polynomial. And factoring by grouping is a great way to factor these higher order polynomials. It's actually one of the most powerful ways to use factoring by grouping. So let's look at letter A. We've got 8x cubed plus 14x squared plus 20x plus 35. So we start off with factoring by grouping like we've been all along. My first set of parentheses, my common factor is a 2x squared. And what am I left with? I'm left with 4x and 7. My second term, what am I looking for? I've got a common factor of a 5, and I can bring out, or that I bring out, and I'm left with 4x plus 7. And then we have 4x plus 7 as a common factor. And we have 2x plus 5. There we go. We have our simplified cubic polynomial that we can find. Do we have, and that's 2x squared plus 5. Do we have any other simplification we can do, any other factoring? No, there's no factors of 10 that add up to 0. There's no difference of perfect squares. There's no other things going on here, so we're simply done right there. All right, letter B. We have 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus x plus 3. So first two terms, last two terms. My first two, 4x cubed and 12x squared. My common factor is a 4x squared. What am I left with? X plus 3. And then we've got a plus 1, or plus x plus 3, common factor is a 1. X plus 3. Now we take out our common term of x plus 3. And what are we left with? We're left with 4x squared plus 1. Okay, there are two U-try problems. I'd like you to do those on your own now. Go. My first two terms, x cubed minus 3x squared. My second last two terms, 6x and minus 18. So x cubed and minus 3x squared. So we've got an x squared, and we've got x minus 3, plus we've got 6x minus 18. Common factor is a 6, and we're left with x minus 3. And x minus 3 is my common term that I can bring out in the grouping. And we're left with x squared plus 6. Okay. Letter D, we put parentheses around x cubed and 6x squared and around 7x and 42. Okay, so my first common terms, x squared or x cubed and 6x squared. So we've got an x squared and x plus 6. Second set of terms, 7x and 42. 7 is my common value. And I have x plus 6. And my common parentheses, x plus 6 gets brought out. What's left? X squared plus 7. All right, so now we have example 2, factoring a polynomial completely. So let's dive into this. First of all, we're going to factor by grouping. And so do I have, but before I do factoring by grouping, do I have any common terms that I can bring out? Do I have a GCF? That should be my first step all the time. Look for a GCF. So I have 9x to the fourth minus, 6x to the fourth minus 9x cubed plus 12x squared minus 18x. Do I have a GCF? I do. And it's a 3x. And then I'm going to have in the parentheses, we've got 2x to the third. We have minus 3x squared plus 4x minus 6. All right, now that we took a GCF out, how can I factor by grouping here? Well, I need to put parentheses on the insides here in these two groups. So we have the 3x still on the outside. Common term in the first set there is x squared, and I'm left with 2x minus 3. And we have our second term, we have a 2 that we can bring out, and I'm left with 2x minus 3. And now 2x minus 3 I can bring out. So 3x comes down, 2x minus 3 is there, x squared plus 2 is there. Now, let's go through briefly and see what would happen if I didn't take out that GCF, right? When it comes to factoring by grouping, what's going to happen if I don't take out a GCF? So we know where we ended up before. Now let's see, do we get to the same place again? So first terms, 6x to the fourth, negative 9x cubed. My common factor is 3x cubed. And what am I left with? I have an x and a minus 3. Plus 12x squared, negative 18x. Common factor in those is going to be a 6x, and I'm left with an x minus 3. Hey, look, I can take that x minus 3 out. X minus 3, and now I have 3x cubed plus 6x. But wait, I can factor that still, right? So I can get to this point and then see I still have some common factors in there, and I can bring out that 3x that I had the first time I factored, and then I have the x minus 3. 3x taken out gives me x squared plus 2, right? And so I get to the same point in the end. Even if I forgot to take that GCF out, it'll get done in the end when it comes to factoring by grouping. If you try to factor box method with something like this, you are going to run into problems. So find that GCF first. That does save you some work. All right. And if you want to walk through this process using box method, you and I can talk in class, and we can take a look at it and walk you through the process of that. All right, let's look at letter B. First thing I want to do is take away a GCF if I can. 3x to the fourth minus 12x cubed plus 15x squared minus 60x. I know for a fact there's a GCF because there's variables in all of those. So I look at my smallest coefficient, which is 3, and that's a common factor in all of my terms. I look at my lowest variable, which is just an x. That is also a common factor in all of my terms. So I get x to the third minus 4x squared plus 5x minus 20. All right, now we're going to break it up into our parentheses. So we've got the 3x just chilling on the outside. And then what's happening on the inside? Well, x to the third and negative 4x squared, I can bring out x squared, and we're left with x minus 4. 5x and 20, we've got a 5 that can come out, and I'm left with x minus 4. X minus 4 is my common term, so the 3x comes down. X minus 4, x squared plus 5. And that is the simplest that we can go. All right, letters C and D, try them on your own. Go. Letter C, x cubed plus 4x squared minus 96 or minus 9x and minus 36. I don't have any GCFs that I can take out off the bat, so let's just kind of work our problems here. I put the parentheses in. I put my plus sign in between them because I like thinking of it as adding the opposite. So x cubed plus 4x squared. So we take an x squared. We have an x plus 4. And then our second term, we can take out a minus 9, and we have x plus 4, which x plus 4, we bring out. And we're left with x squared minus 9. Are we done yet? No, because x squared minus 9 is one of those difference of perfect squares that we learned about yesterday. So we have x plus 4, we have x plus 3, x minus 3, right? Difference of perfect squares. It's a nice, easy one for you to be able to identify when I'm asking you to do a two-step problem without a lot of thinking. All right, letter D. Uh, I see my lowest coefficient is 1, so I know there's no GCF here that I can take apart. So we're going to substitute, or we're going to put in our parentheses, and we put in my plus sign because I like thinking of that third term as being positive or adding in some way, shape, or form. So 25x cubed minus 25x squared. So we have 25x squared, and what's left? X minus 1. And then we have negative x plus 1. Well, I'm going to bring out a negative 1, and I have x minus 1. All right, so now common factor, x minus 1 times what's left, 25x squared minus 1. 25x squared, difference of perfect squares. So we have x minus 1, and we have 5x plus 1, 5x minus 1. All right, let's go ahead and flip to the next page for our final two problems. Finding dimensions of a rectangular prism. So we have a rectangular prism has a volume of 60x cubed plus 34x squared plus 4x. What expression can represent the dimensions of the prism using factoring? So I like to factor this by grouping, but first, what are my common terms? Do I have a GCF I can take out? I do. All three numbers are even, right? 34 is not divisible by 4, but it is divisible by 2. And there's an x in all three of my terms. So I have a 2 and an x that comes out. And so I have 30x squared plus 17x plus 2. All right, so now I need to factor, and I'm going to go by grouping on this one because that's the concept of this whole thing. So I need to find what are my factors of 60 that add up to 17. Remember, it's 30 times 2 is 60. So factors of 60 that add up to 17. And so we've got a 12 and we got a 5. Those two factors came up a lot in the previous two units. So we're going to use them here. So we have 2x, and then we've got 30x squared plus 12x plus 5x plus 2. And we put in our parentheses. And what do we get? Well, 2x is still out in front. 30x squared plus 12x, common factor there is a 6x, and we're left with 5x plus 2. And then we have 5x plus 2, so the common factor there is 1, and we have 5x plus 2. And now lastly, 5x plus 2 is my common term to bring out. So we have 2x, we have 5x plus 2, and we have 6x plus 1. So those are my three factors of this polynomial. So those three values would represent the three sides of this rectangular prism. You try letter B. Rectangular prism has a volume of 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus 5x. What expression can represent the dimensions of the prism using factoring? So let's start with finding our GCF. There is definitely a variable GCF because there's a variable in each term. There is no coefficient though because you have 4, 5, and 12. There are no common terms that are not equal to 1 there. So we can just bring out the x, and we're left with 4x squared plus 12x plus 5. All right, so I'm looking for factors of 20 that add up to 12. Well, that's going to be 10 and 2. So plus 10x plus 2x plus 5. Okay. So factor by grouping. X. Our first term, 4x squared and 10x, common factor is a 2x. And I'm left with 2x plus 5. And we have a plus, we're going to have a 1, and we've got 2x plus 5. And our next term, so we have an x, we have 2x plus 5, and we have 2x plus 1. Those are my three terms that represent the side lengths of this rectangular prism. All right, that's the end of the Module 10 notes. If you have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow. Otherwise, I hope you have a great night.